Hello everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, before we get started, the only thing that you will need is the color palette. As always, I have it linked in the description below, totally free to download. Just open the file that downloads and it'll automatically pop all the colors into Procreate so that you can use them as you follow along. So take a second to go grab that and then come back and we will get started. First things first, we will go over the canvas dimensions. The dimensions that I'm using today are 8 inches wide by 10 inches high at 300 dpi. The color palette that we're using is the second one on the RGB list. And by the end of the video, we will have used about 26 layers. So there will be a spot in the video where we can combine some layers to save some. About 10 layers we can probably save at some point. So you might only need about 15 or 16. But if you want the full 26 layers, just lower your DPI until you have at least that many to work with. Okay, and then this is what our color palette looks like. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to our layers menu and we're going to click on the very bottom layer, the background color, and then it'll pop up all your colors. Select the first one on the color palette on the first row and that'll fill the entire background. And the first thing that we are going to do is be on layer 1, go to our color palette, select the second color on the top row, go to our brushes, and we are using the monoline brush under the calligraphy tab. And our size is at about 60%. And we are going to just draw the trees in the background. There's 3 really big trees, so let's draw a straight line up and down. Hold your pen down at the end till it turns perfectly straight, and then touch your finger on the screen to make it perfectly vertical. And then if you look at its shape at the top of the screen, you can move it around a little. I'm gonna have this one go off the right edge here, so I will fill that in. And then we'll make another tree with 2 more vertical lines. Again, make sure to touch your finger on the screen so they turn perfectly vertical. And then I'll fill that in between them to make another tree trunk. And then let's have one further to the right here, but not all going off the edge. And let's make that one kind of skinny and we will fill that in as well. Okay, so that is the start to our background. Nothing too crazy, just the 3 tree trunks. And next we are going to draw the hill in front of these because we are going to use the same brush and color. So go to your layers menu, add a new layer on top of this layer. And using that same brush and same color and everything, we are going to just draw a quick little hill right in the front. I'm going to start on the left side about 1/3 of the way up and then have it swoop down just a little as I go off the right side. And then you can fill that in below. Okay, now that that's in place, let's go back to our layers menu, go to our original tree layer, add a new layer on top of that, click on the layer, turn on clipping mask, and then let's go to our brushes and we are going to find the industrial category and use this corrugated brush down at the bottom here. And the size is about 20%. And then we are going to grab the color. It is going to be this 3rd color on the top row. And we are going to just, keeping your canvas straight up and down, draw some little sections of this kind of texture on our trees. So you don't want your canvas to be crooked at all. It will draw your lines crooked, but if you keep your canvas straight up and down, it will make the lines also straight up and down with this brush. Okay, so once you do that for all of the trees, we're going to go to our color palette, select the 4th color on the top row, and do the same thing with this lighter blue color. Just kind of going in sections again, like we did with our darker color. It's okay if they overlap a little bit, just to add some texture and definition. Awesome. Okay, so next we are going to make our trees that sit on the hilltop, and they're more just like pine trees, like a Christmas tree. And we're going to do that just by drawing shapes and then filling it in, and then we'll add some highlights and shadows to them in the next step. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer on top of all of them, go to our color palette and select the 3rd color on the top row. And then we are going to find our brush menu again and go back to our calligraphy monoline brush. Let's drop the size to about 40%. And then we are going to draw a triangle shape, a small triangle, another small triangle below that that's a little bit bigger, a small triangle again, and a triangle again below that. So 4 triangles basically all on top of each other like this, and then I'm going to go through and fill each of them in. They overlap a little bit, so there are, you know, a few spots to fill in between them as well, so it's maybe even best to use your brush sometimes. After that, we're going to add a little bit more variety to the branches by adding in just a few little kind of slanted lines coming off of a few of the triangles on either side. Okay, then we're going to go to our layer menu, add a new layer on top of this one, and do the same exact thing. So we'll start a little further to the left and a little further down, and maybe make a smaller tree here, or about the same size, but you know, it'll just be a little different than the one before. We could just copy and paste this tree a bunch of times, but I kind of wanted them to each be a little more unique. So this is probably the longest step in our process, is making these trees. But I figured it would be worth it to make them all a little different. And you know, I know a lot of tutorials use like a brush stamp for this kind of thing, but I thought it would be fun to draw them all separately. So if you need to go to the layers menu and turn off your old layer, you can, so that you can see the full tree that you're working on. But let's add a new layer and add another tree. Every once in a while, your triangle shape that you draw might end up not quite a triangle. It's okay if it doesn't connect at the top, since we're just filling in this whole shape. But if it turns into like a 4-sided shape or something, you can just redo it. Or you can also click edit shape at the top, and it might give you the option to click on triangle instead. But if not, just redraw it until you like the way it looks. Again, make sure that you're adding in these little kind of flyaway branches on some of the layers of each tree. Then we can also click the arrow tool and kind of move them around, resize them if necessary. But we will continue drawing just a few more over on this left side here. I think we'll go for a total of 6. So I have 3 so far. So let's draw probably 3 more, move them around if necessary. Make sure to turn off your other layers if you need to see what you're drawing. And then we'll move on. Also, make sure to keep them all on their own layer. It will use up quite a bit of layers for now, but we do need to shade and highlight them each individually. But then if you are running low on layers, we can group them all together when we're done with them to save you some layers for the rest of the project. Okay, so this was our 6th tree. So let's see, after I am finished with it, I think, let's see, I'll click the arrow tool and kind of move it closer, but feel free to resize and move these around. They should just take up this last, left side of your hill, and then we are going to add some to the right side. So if you need to make them a little smaller, you totally can. And then now we are going to start doing duplicates. So go to your layer menu, find one of the trees, any of them, make a duplicate of it by sliding left and clicking duplicate, and then drag that layer to the very top of your layers, and then move it, then click the arrow tool and move it to the right side of the screen. So do that with just 4 trees. We'll have 6 on the left side, 4 on the right side. Resize them a little if you want to. And yeah, just kind of lay them out however you'd like. Again, make sure to drag that layer to the top of the layer list every time, just so we kind of know where they're at, that these top 4 are the right side. Okay, so the next step is to add highlights and shadows to all of them. So the first thing we need to do is go into the layer menu and click on each tree layer, click on the layer and turn on alpha lock. So do that for every single one of these tree layers. When you're done with that, we will start from the bottom. So find the bottommost tree layer on the layers menu, select it, and then go to our color palette, select the 4th color on the top row, and for the brush, we are going to go under the charcoal category, the 2B compressed charcoal at the top. Size is about 20, and then we are going to just lightly on the right side of the trees, we are going to make some little highlights. Very, very lightly drag your pen across this area. A little bit on the left side too. We want to highlight the right side of these trees a little bit more because that's where our moon is going to be. But we do want a teeny bit of highlight on the left side. Also, just towards the top of the branches, don't go towards the middle of the tree. But if you need to know which layer you're on, just click the arrow tool and it'll kind of put a box around which tree you're working on so that you know which one you are doing. So then go into the layers menu, find the next tree on the next layer above that, click the arrow tool so that you can find the tree on your canvas, and then add the highlights. And you can draw into the tree just a little bit like I'm doing here to kind of show where those branches are. So just kind of at an angle following like the triangles that we created earlier. But just kind of play around and see what you think looks right. And again, we are going to do this for all the trees all the way across. And again, I wanted them all to be unique. We could have easily just copy and pasted this after doing all the highlights and everything, but I wanted them all to be unique. And then when we get to the left or the right side trees, we'll highlight on the left side instead, since that is facing the moon. But again, just go through and make highlights on the edges of the trees here. Again, if you want to, you can turn off some of the trees around it by clicking the little arrow box on the layer menu, and that'll make them disappear so that we can see which tree we're working on a little bit better. so now we're on the left side, so I will turn one of them on, select that layer, and then click the arrow tool just to make sure I know that I'm on that correct tree. And then this time we are going to mainly highlight the left side of the tree, which will be facing the moon, but still highlight a little bit just kind of on the right side towards the outside of the tree as well, where there would be a little bit of highlight. And we'll just go on and turn on the next layer and keep on going. Okay, so that was our last tree on the right side. So now we are going to go into our layers menu, turn them all back on, and we are now going to add some shadows to them as well. So go to the color palette, select the last color on the top row, same brush, go back to our original first tree that we were working on at the very bottom of our tree layers, click the arrow tool so that you make sure you're on the right one, and we're just going to very lightly draw some shadows towards the inside of the tree, just kind of going back and forth. You don't need to lay it on too thick, just kind of gently and sparsely drag your brush around in towards the middle to add some shadow and some depth there. And again, we're just going to do this for every tree all the way across. So take your time and do this, and then we'll finally be done with these pesky trees. Okay, so if you have your trees where you like them and you don't want to make any changes, this is where you can save some layers by going to the layer menu and then just use your two fingers to drag all these layers and pinch them together so that they're all on one layer, and that will open up some more layers for you if you need it. Otherwise, we are going to move on and start drawing our tent. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer on top of all of these tree layers. And then let's go to our color palette and select the third color on the second row, this first green color. And we're going to go back to our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab, same size as we had it on earlier, and we are just going to draw a triangle, and we want it to be a perfect triangle. So draw it a couple times if you need to until it kind of snaps to a perfect triangle. Touch your finger on the screen until you get a perfect triangle like this. So So it'll be like an equilateral triangle, and then kind of move it around until you get a good triangle shape like this towards the bottom left of your screen. You can always resize it if you need to. Click on the arrow tool, turn on uniform, and then drag the size up if you want. And then we are going to place that and fill it in. Then on a separate layer, we're going to draw the rest of the tent. So let's add a new layer and then drag it below our triangle layer. Then we will go to our color palette and select the 5th color on the 2nd row, the darker green, and using that same brush, we are going to start on the left side of our triangle at the top, draw a straight line off the screen, hold it down until it turns into a perfectly straight line, and then touch your finger on the screen to make it perfectly horizontal. Then draw an imaginary line behind our triangle towards the bottom of the triangle, and then draw another line going off the screen from the bottom point on that triangle, just like this, and then fill it in. If it doesn't fill in, make sure you have your lines connected behind the triangle, and then it should work. Okay, now we're gonna make our tent opening, so let's add a new layer on top of our triangle layer here. Click on it and turn it into a clipping mask. Go to our color palette, select the 1st color on the 2nd row, and then that same monoline brush, we are going to draw, starting in the middle upper part of our triangle, draw a line outwards towards the bottom, a curved line, and then do the same thing on the right side. What I did is I held it down so it turned into a perfectly curved line, and then I could click edit at the top to kind of adjust it. And then we are going to have to close the shape at the bottom so that we can fill it in. Okay, so now we're going to add some texture to all of our little pieces of the tent here. So let's go to the layer menu, and starting on the bottom rectangular shape, click on that layer, turn on alpha lock, click on this one alpha lock, and this one alpha lock on all of them. And then we're going to start on this bottom one, the darkest green, and we're going to go back to our 2B charcoal brush under the charcoal menu. And we are going to set the size to about 10 to 15%. And we're going to grab our 3rd color on the middle row here, and we are going to just lightly draw some highlights towards the top of the tent. Then we're going to go to our middle triangle layer, select the 4th color on the 2nd row, and add some highlights to the right side of the tent. And then go to our yellow layer and select the 2nd color on the 2nd row and add some highlights on the right side of the opening there. Awesome. Okay, so we are going to move on now to the campfire. So let's go to our layers menu, and if you haven't grouped all those tree layers together onto one layer, you can do that now, or you can just select them all and put them in a group so that we can kind of hide them on our layer menu so they're not in the way. So let's select one and then slide to the right on each of the other ones to select it as well, and then click group at the top, and then you can click the arrow to kind of collapse that group so that we don't have to see it. Let's do the same thing with our tent layers as well, just to kind of keep it organized. Then let's add a new layer on top, and we're going to go to our color palette, select the 1st color on the 3rd row, go back to our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab, if I can find it. Okay, and then we are going to draw to make our log shape, we are going to first draw a small oval, kind of like a vertical oval, like this, and then we're going to go and fill that in, and then we're going to draw a straight line across, hold your pen down to make it perfectly straight, and then touch your finger on the screen to make it perfectly horizontal. Do the same thing on the bottom to about the same point. Click edit if you need to kind of get it lined up better, and then we are going to grab the 2nd color on the last row and draw another oval on the other end. Click edit at the top if you need to adjust it, and then fill it in with that darker brown color, then go back to our light brown, the 1st color, and fill in the rest of the logs. So you'll have one kind of darker oval and then one big light brown shape. As with everything, we're going to add some texture to this. So let's go to our layer menu, click on this layer and turn on alpha lock, go to our color palette, grab the 2nd color in the last row. Then we're going to switch back to our 2B compressed charcoal under the charcoal category, and let's just lightly add some texture to the bottom of our log. Okay, and I want this log to be a little skinnier, so let's click our arrow tool, turn on freeform, and drag the bottom up just a little bit to make it a little bit skinnier and a little bit shorter. So we don't need to be ginormous. So Now we need another log, so let's go to our layer menu and we'll slide to the left on this layer and make a duplicate, and then click the arrow tool, click flip horizontal, use this top bar to shift the angle of it a little bit until it's laying kind of sideways on top of our other one here. Okay, so now we're going to add the flame. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer on top of our 2 logs, go to our color palette and select the third color on the last row, and then go back to our monoline brush again. And the first thing that we're going to do is drop the size to, and then we're going to draw a circle to start our little flame. So draw a circular shape, hold your pen down, and then touch your finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle. And then starting on the left side, we're just going to draw some little flame pieces. So just some kind of squiggly lines going out to a point and then back in. We'll draw a bigger one in the middle here, and then we'll draw another one on the right side. And your typical flame shape, and then we'll fill in all of these pieces till it's all one big blob. Now we're going to draw some little embers coming off of it, so let's go to our color palette, select the 4th color on the last row, and we're just going to draw some little kind of squiggly pieces that kind of resemble our original flame in, you know, pointy edges and whatnot. We'll draw another one on this side, and this is all on the same layer that we drew our original piece on. And then the last one will make maybe like a little teardrop kind of shape, a really small one at the top. And then let's do the same thing, grab the last color on the last row and draw a few more little pieces on the outer edge here. Okay, awesome. So now to make it look a little more flame-like, we are going to go to our layer menu, and on this layer click the N next to the layer, and we are going to drag it down to linear light. These are all blending modes. They all make it look a little bit different, but this one I thought looked really good for the flame. And then you can drag, then we can also adjust the opacity down to about 70 to 80%, whatever you think looks good. Then we can grab the arrow tool and kind of move it around more on top of our logs if you need to, adjust the size if you want to. Then let's add a new layer underneath our flames that we just drew and grab the 3rd color on the 3rd row. And we're going to find a new brush, the airbrushing category, the soft brush, and set the size to 20%. And then we're just going to lightly add some light around and behind our flame. So very, very lightly with your pen. And then let's go to the layer, click on the N and drag the opacity down just a little bit to maybe 75, just until it doesn't look quite so crazy. And then we can even drop our flame layer, the opacity down on that a little bit too, because it got kind of bright when we put that light behind it. So just kind of adjust the opacity till you like how it looks. Then let's add a new layer above this glow layer, but below our flame, and same color. We are going to grab a different brush though under luminance, the light flare brush. And I didn't adjust the size, but find a size that you like and just kind of play around with adding some little flares around the fire, kind of like, you know, little pieces of ember or flame or ash kind of coming off of it. Okay, and that completes like the campfire scene. So now we're going to add the moon and the stars in the sky, and that will be our last step. So go to our layer menu, add a new layer on top of the background. So find the tree layer, add a new layer on top of that, and drag it below that. So it's right on top of the background layer. Go to the brushes, and we are going to go back to our monoline brush again, and go to our color palette and select the 5th color on the top row. And we are going to draw a circle. Hold your pen down, touch your finger on the screen to make it a perfect circle. Draw another one next to it. And what you're going to see here is this moon shape on the left here. And that is what our moon is going to look like. So draw your circles until you like the way that moon shape will look. A real fancy trick. And we are going to click on the layer menu, click on this layer, turn it into a reference layer, add a new layer on top of it, select that one. Use your color dropper to fill in that moon shape, and then go back to your layer menu and delete that original circle layer, and you'll just be left with this moon shape in the sky. So that's one of many ways to make a moon, but that's a good one. Then let's adjust our brush size up just a little bit to about 60%, and we're going to draw some circular shapes all over the canvas. We want some bigger, some smaller, so I'll draw some big ones now in between our trees too. And then we'll drop our brush size down a little bit and draw some more smaller ones. Just use whatever size works for you. Maybe up a little bit more than that so we can just kind of dot around and make some smaller stars like so. And once you have that looking the way you'd like it, let's go to our layer menu, make a duplicate of this layer, select the bottom one, and click on the wand icon, Gaussian Blur layer, and drag that up to about 10 to 15% to give it a nice glow behind our moon and our stars. For our final step, we're going to go back to our layer menu, add a new layer right on top of the background layer, same color, and then we're going to switch our brush to the nebula brush under luminance. And the size is about 40%, and we're just going to draw a quick little patch right behind our moon, kind of zigzagging through the sky. Very, very lightly, just to add a little fun there. Okay, I lied, there's one last step. So we're gonna go to our layer menu, find our hill layer that we made right at the beginning, click on it and turn on alpha lock, and then we're gonna go back to our to be compressed charcoal brush at about 25%, and we're going to find the third color on the top row of the color palette, and we are just going to draw some shadowy colors underneath our tent and our fire and even our trees in the background a little, just on any little bit of that hillside that you can see near any of our objects. Lightly, very lightly, and then we're going to go to our color palette and select the fourth color on the top row and do the same thing, add a little bit of light through our hilltop, kind of like near the fire. And just to give it a little more texture, maybe right in front here where there's no shadow. Okay, and that was officially our last step. So that is it for our drawing today. I hope you had fun. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more tutorials from me. Also, if you would like to share your drawing on Instagram, I would love to see it. So go ahead and post it and then tag me so that I can check it out. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching.